Au revoir, Paul Biya. Au revoir, Paul Biya.
Number 1. Welcome to Intervlog, the channel where we explore Africa's evolving political landscape with a calm voice, factual precision, and respect for every nation's right to shape its own destiny. Today, we turn our attention to Cameroon, a country once admired for its relative stability, but now again at the center of debate following a deeply contested presidential election. Across Africa and beyond, the story of Cameroon's 2025 vote has stirred old questions about democracy, continuity, and power. President Paul Biya, now well into his 10th decade of life and 40-plus years into his presidency, faces renewed accusations of electoral manipulation. His challenger, Issa Tchiroma Bakary, a former ally turned opponent, claims he was denied victory through a system many critics describe as opaque. The international community watches closely, and voices such as that of United States Congressman Jonathan L. Jackson have added weight to concerns already echoing inside the country. The congressman's statement was cautious but clear. He praised the Cameroonian people for their participation in the democratic process, yet expressed worry about limited political freedoms, restrictions on civil society and the media, and voter disenfranchisement in conflict-affected regions. His words carried the neutral tone of diplomacy, but the implications were unmistakable. The credibility of the electoral process is under strain. In response, he urged Cameroonian institutions, the Electoral Commission, the Judiciary, and the Constitutional Council, to uphold transparency and accountability. He also called for restraint, dialogue, and peaceful dispute resolution. It is a familiar appeal in African politics, one that repeats whenever trust between rulers and citizens begins to erode. The parable often told in West Africa captures this moment well. Quand le coq chante avant l'aube, ce n'est pas pour annoncer le soleil, mais pour rappeler qu'il existe. In English, when the rooster crows before dawn, it is not to announce the sun, but to remind the world that it still lives. Applied here, the saying reminds us that when citizens raise their voices after elections, they do so not merely to contest a result, but to affirm their continued existence within the civic space, to remind those in power that the people, too, are alive and awake. Cameroon's Constitutional Council, dominated by judges appointed by President Biya himself, swiftly dismissed 8 petitions from opposition figures demanding either partial or total annulment of the election. The judges cited insufficient evidence or lack of jurisdiction. With that, the stage was set for another predictable announcement: Biya's victory. To many Cameroonians, they feel predetermined. The opposition alleges ballot stuffing, intimidation at polling stations, and a deliberate effort to suppress votes in conflict zones, notably in the Anglophone regions, where insecurity already discourages participation. Opposition candidate Tchiroma Bakary, 76 years old, had broken ranks with Biya years ago. Having once served as government spokesman, he understood the machinery of state communication intimately. In the aftermath of the vote, he refused to submit formal complaints to the Constitutional Council, insisting that it could not judge its own master. Instead, he declared himself the legal and legitimate president, claiming he had secured roughly 55% of the vote, based on data representing 80% of the electorate. Such declarations are risky, yet not unprecedented in Cameroon's modern political history. Past contenders, John Fruendi, Maurice Kamto, and others, made similar claims, each time confronting the same system and reaching the same wall. The pattern reinforces a perception, widely held among citizens, that Paul Biya will never accept electoral defeat. Historical echoes. For many Cameroonians, this election is not simply about 2025, it is about a continuity of rule dating back to 1982, when Biya first assumed office. The intervening decades have witnessed constitutional amendments, postponed elections, and a gradual consolidation of presidential power. Cameroon's constitution, revised in 2008, removed term limits entirely, an act seen by critics as the ceiling of perpetual incumbency. Within this framework, opposition victories become mathematically possible but politically inconceivable. The French proverb fits aptly here. On ne change pas les chevaux au milieu du gué. One does not change horses midstream. In ordinary contexts, the saying encourages stability in times of crisis. In Cameroon's political life, however, it has become an unwritten doctrine used to justify endless continuity. Supporters of Biya argue that his longevity ensures peace. Detractors counter that it breeds stagnation and disenfranchisement. As the Constitutional Council dismissed complaints, the streets of major cities, Yaoundé, Douala, Garoua, echoed with protest. Some demonstrations were peaceful, others faced immediate dispersal by security forces. The Catholic Church, still one of the few institutions with broad moral credibility, urged the judiciary to ensure that the verdict reflected the true will of voters. The tension, though visible, was tempered by fatigue. Many citizens have witnessed this cycle repeatedly. Pre-election optimism, polling day irregularities, post-election disputes, and eventual acceptance of the status quo. Yet this time, observers note an undercurrent of regional frustration. The North, from which Tchiroma Bakary hails, has long felt politically sidelined. His candidacy, therefore, carried a symbolic weight, a sense of northern assertion against decades of southern dominance in the country's leadership structure. The offer and the rejection. Then came a revelation that added a dramatic layer to the post-election narrative. According to reports from Jeune Afrique, President Biya extended a secret offer to his rival. The position of Prime Minister, coupled with promises of electoral reform before the next legislative elections. The emissaries allegedly included the governor of the northern region and other presidential envoys. For the first time in years, Biya appeared willing to share symbolic power. Analysts described it as uncharacteristic, a sign either of magnanimity or of political calculation. But Tchiroma Bakary rejected the proposal outright. His response, as quoted by one associate, was firm. All Issa Tchiroma Bakary demands is recognition of the truth of the ballot box. The rejection underscored a moral divide between reconciliation and principle. Accepting the prime ministerial role could have offered him influence, resources, and visibility, yet to do so might also have meant endorsing what he calls a falsified and truncated result. By declining, he placed himself in the lineage of opposition figures who prefer political exile to co-optation. Here, another parable from the francophone tradition applies: Celui qui mange avec le lion doit avoir un long couteau. He who dines with the lion must have a long knife. In essence, it warns that partnerships with power demand caution, distance, and preparedness. For Tchiroma, dining with the lion, accepting Biya's offer, risked devouring his credibility among supporters who believe he truly won the election. International reactions. The United States statement joined a chorus of diplomatic concern. The African Union urged calm. The European Union repeated its usual message about transparency and dialogue, yet the global community remains careful not to interfere too directly. Cameroon, after all, is a key security partner in the fight against Boko Haram and plays a stabilizing role in Central Africa. For Washington, Brussels, and Paris, the principle of democracy must constantly be weighed against the pragmatic need for regional stability. This duality explains the restrained tone of Congressman Jackson's message. His appeal for respect of the will of the people coexists with a reaffirmation of partnership with the Cameroonian government. In diplomatic language, that combination often signifies concern without confrontation. Within Cameroon, journalists and civic activists find themselves navigating tight boundaries. Reports of internet disruptions, restrictions on gatherings, and selective accreditation of election observers have become recurring features of the political landscape. Local media outlets attempting to question official tallies face accusations of bias or risk suspension. Despite these constraints, independent voices persist. Online platforms, citizen reporters, and diaspora media continue to circulate alternative vote counts and testimonies. Their role is crucial, but their reach is limited within a system where the state maintains firm control over communication infrastructure. At 92, Paul Biya represents one of the last living connections to the post-colonial generation of African leaders. His tenure outlasts the Cold War, multiple constitutional reforms, and at least 6 American presidents. To many young Cameroonians, he is the only leader they have ever known. This continuity is both remarkable and troubling. Critics say it reflects the entrenchment of a political elite resistant to renewal. Supporters, however, argue that Biya's longevity has preserved national unity in a country of diverse languages, religions, and regions. In their view, continuity has prevented Cameroon from descending into chaos like some of its neighbors. The truth may lie somewhere between admiration and fatigue. Style neutrality requires acknowledging both perspectives: the president's experience and stability, and the people's yearning for generational change. The challenge ahead. As the Constitutional Council prepares to announce its final verdict, tension simmers beneath the surface. Tchiroma's camp speaks of an action plan to defend the popular victory, including demonstrations and publication of parallel results. The government warns against any attempt to disturb public order. Each side frames its stance as patriotic duty. The ruling party insists that defending the constitutional framework is essential to national unity. The opposition argues that defending truth is essential to democracy. Between these positions lies the fragile balance of peace. The French saying, "Quand deux éléphants se battent, c'est l'herbe qui souffre." When 2 elephants fight, it is the grass that suffers, resonates deeply here. Whatever outcome emerges, ordinary Cameroonians bear the consequences. Disrupted livelihoods, restricted freedoms, and deepening mistrust in institutions. The broader African context, Cameroon's dilemma mirrors a continental pattern. Across several African states, long-serving leaders maintain control through constitutional engineering, patronage networks, and managed elections. Yet demographic realities are shifting. A youthful population connected by social media demands participation, accountability, and renewal. In this light, Tchiroma Bakary's defiance is more than personal ambition. It reflects a generational and psychological divide between an old order built on loyalty and a new one seeking legitimacy through transparency. Whether this moment becomes a turning point or another entry in Cameroon's cycle of controlled continuity depends on what happens after the Constitutional Council's final proclamation. In the days that followed the rejection of petitions, Cameroon entered a period of waiting. The atmosphere was quiet but tense. Shops opened, traffic flowed, yet conversations in taxis and cafes revolved around one question: would anything really change this time? President Biya's long rule has shaped expectations. Many Cameroonians assume that official results will always confirm his victory. They have seen this before. 1992, 2004, 2011, 2018, and the pattern appears the same. The opposition contests the figures, the courts dismiss the complaints, the ruling party calls for unity and peace. Observers note that the country's institutions rarely act independently. The electoral body, the judiciary, and even the media have limited space to operate without influence from the executive. It is therefore unsurprising that many citizens view every election as a performance rather than a competition. Political negotiation as a safety valve. Biya's reported offer of the prime ministerial post to Issa Tchiroma Bakary fits a long-standing practice in African politics: co-optation. When tensions rise, those in power often extend limited concessions to rivals. Such gestures can prevent, yet they also protect the status quo. For some analysts, the proposal was meant to show flexibility and calm external partners. For others, it was a calculated move to neutralize the main challenger without conceding defeat. The French parable, "On ne prête pas le dos au léopard," one does not lend one's back to the leopard, captures the hesitation many feel towards such arrangements. In other words, one cannot lean on power that may strike at any moment. Tchiroma's refusal strengthened his image among supporters, but left him isolated institutionally. Without control over the courts, the Electoral Commission, or the security forces, his declaration of victory exists more in symbolism than in law. The international balanced foreign governments continue to walk a narrow path. The United States reiterates its commitment to democracy while keeping cooperation on security. The European Union and the African Union make similar appeals. None wants to provoke instability in a region already facing threats from Boko Haram and armed separatists. This balance produces a predictable pattern: statements of concern, calls for dialogue, and eventual acceptance of whatever result emerges. The global community values stability, sometimes even more than fairness. In the neutral view, both aims, peace and legitimacy, must coexist, yet history shows they rarely do so perfectly. Within Cameroon, civic organizations demand reforms to restore trust. They ask for a new electoral code, more independent observers, and better access for opposition parties. The government promises gradual changes, but sets no clear timetable. Young activists, many communicating through encrypted messaging and small online networks, continue to debate strategies for future participation. They emphasize civic education and local engagement rather than confrontation. Their reasoning is simple: transformation may be slow, but it begins with awareness. A proverb from Francophone Africa summarizes this approach: Petit à petit, l'oiseau fait son nid. Little by little, the bird builds its nest. It is a reminder that enduring progress often comes quietly rather than through sudden upheaval. While politics dominate headlines, daily life for most citizens remains shaped by economic hardship. Youth unemployment, inflation, and uneven development fuel frustration. Many young people who doubt the value of voting also feel excluded from opportunity. Analysts warn that without credible political change, social pressures could intensify. If elections are perceived as predetermined, public faith in lawful channels erodes, and protests become the only voice left. The risk of unrest, therefore, is not solely political, but also socio-economic. The symbolism of age and renewal. At 92, President Biya stands as both a symbol of endurance and of distance from younger generations. His long absence from public appearances and limited campaigning raise questions about governance capacity. Yet within his circle, loyalty remains firm. The system functions through delegation, ensuring continuity regardless of personal visibility. For many citizens under 40, however, the question is no longer about one man, but about renewal itself. They wonder whether leadership can evolve in a framework built on permanence. The answer, for now, remains uncertain, waiting for the verdict. As the Constitutional Council prepares its final announcement, security presence increases around key buildings. Opposition supporters plan symbolic gatherings, though most are quickly dispersed. The state urges calm, emphasizing unity and legal procedure. Tchiroma Bakary's team claims to hold alternative results from polling stations. They promise to publish evidence at the appropriate time. For neutral observers, the challenge lies in verification. Without independent institutions, both official and opposition numbers are treated with caution. The French saying, "La vérité sortira du puits," truth will come out of the well, expresses the slow, uncertain journey of facts in such contexts. It may surface later through documents, testimonies, or history itself. Looking forward. Cameroon's experience raises broader questions for Africa's democracies. How can long-serving leaders prepare genuine transitions? How can institutions become stronger than individuals? The neutral answer points to structural reforms. Credible electoral commissions, term limits, civic education, and rule of law. Yet reforms require political will, and political will often depends on pressure from citizens, regional peers, or global partners. Without it, systems tend to revert to familiar patterns. As Intervlog observes, the coming months will test whether Cameroon's leadership can balance continuity with legitimacy. The opposition's defiance may fade, but the underlying demand for fairness will persist. Each election that repeats the same dispute weakens trust a little more. In Cameroon today, calm streets mask deeper uncertainty. The official narrative stresses peace and order. The public mood blends resignation with quiet determination. Whether one believes in Biya's victory or Tchiroma's claim, one fact stands clear. Many citizens no longer feel represented by outcomes decided beyond their reach. The proverb says, Quand le vent souffle, on voit ceux dont la maison n'a pas de toit. When the wind blows, we see who has no roof. Elections, like strong winds, reveal the weaknesses of institutions. The task ahead is to repair those roofs before the next storm. This is the end of our program today. See you on Intervlog, same time tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to my channel and press the bell icon to get new video updates. Thank you for watching Intervlog. Thank you.